What are the different types of piston rings? Compression rings, oil control rings, and scraper rings. What is the purpose of the oil control rings? To control the thickness of the oil film on the cylinder walls. What may be the result of installing piston rings incorrectly? Excessive oil consumption. What type of piston rods are commonly found in radial engines? A master and articulating rod assembly. What type bearings are in general use in reciprocating engines? Plain bearings, roller bearings, ball bearings. What is the purpose of valve overlap? Valve overlap permits better volumetric efficiency and lowers the cylinder operating temperatures. What causes engine sudden stoppage? Striking an object or engine seizure due to internal damage. What are the two principal types of compressors used in turbojet aircraft? The two most common compressors in use today are the centrifugal flow and the axial flow types. What are three types of combustion chamber systems? They are the can type, the can-annular type, and the annular type. What types of damage may be found when inspecting compressor blades? Dents, scratches, gouges, galling, burns, burrs, pitting, and cracks. Name an advantage of a turbofan over a turbojet. Additional thrust without increasing fuel flow. What is the effect of relative humidity on turbojet or turbofan power? Negligible. What are the two most common types of thrust reversers? The mechanical blockage type and the aerodynamic blockage type. What is one method of relieving thermal stress on a turbine disc? One means is to bleed cooling air back onto the face of the disc. What may be the indications if a turbojet engine is out of trim? The engine has high exhaust gas temperature at target engine pressure ratio for takeoff. What may be used as a guide for a 100-hour inspection on an aircraft engine? FAR Part 43, Appendix D. What additional inspection must be performed if the cylinder compression is weak? An internal cylinder inspection. Where are the engine operating limitations found? In the aircraft specifications or type certificate data sheet. Where can a mechanic look to identify an aircraft engine? On the engine identification plate that is affixed to the engine at an accessible location. What publication is needed to inspect an engine for conformity with specifications? The engine specifications or engine type certificate data sheet. What type of FAA approval is required when a change to an engine type design is not enough to require a new type certificate? A supplemental type certificate is required. What type of FAA approval is required when a change is made to the engine principle of operation? A new type certificate must be obtained. When removing turbojet or turbofan turbine blades, why is it important that they be installed in the same location? To maintain balance of the turbine wheel. What criteria are used to determine the replacement of life-limited turbine engine components? Cycles, hours, or calendar time. What are the units in an engine fuel flow system? A transmitter and an indicator for each engine. Where is the fuel flow transmitter located? It is mounted in the fuel line between the engine-driven pump and the carburetor. What type of readout is indicated on a fuel flow system? The indicator is calibrated to record the fuel flow in pounds or gallons of fuel per hour. What does a manifold pressure gauge indicate? It measures absolute pressure in the intake manifold of inches of mercury. What would be the effect of a broken manifold pressure gauge line? Will cause the gauge to indicate atmospheric pressure. What does a reciprocating engine tachometer indicate? It indicates crankshaft speed. What are turbine engine tachometers designed to indicate? They're designed to indicate % of compressor rotor RPM. Where is a carburetor air temperature bulb located? It is located in the air intake passage to the engine. How can a turbine engine EGT be checked without operating the engine? By checking resistance to thermocouples and circuits. Where should the thermocouple be installed on a single probe cylinder head temperature system? On the hottest cylinder. What types of fire detectors are used for engine fire protection systems? They are overheat detectors, rate of temperature rise detectors, and flame detectors. What two methods are used to discharge fire extinguishing agents? Mechanical and electrical. What method other than the pressure gauge is used to indicate low agent pressure in a container? Some aircraft are equipped with a low pressure warning light in the cockpit. What is the purpose of the yellow and the red discharge plugs in a turbine engine fire extinguishing system? The yellow plug indicates normal discharge and the red plug indicates thermal discharge. What are two methods commonly used to distribute the fire extinguishing agent to the engine? Many systems use perforated tubing or discharge nozzles to distribute the agent. How does the fire extinguishing agent put out the fire? It dilutes the atmosphere so that it will not support combustion. What is a HRD fire extinguishing system? High rate of discharge. How is the fire extinguishing agent distributed from a HRD system? It is delivered from open-end tubes. How long does it take to discharge the extinguishing agent in a HRD system? It takes only 1 to 2 seconds. Where is the generator rating and performance data located? It is stamped on the nameplate attached to the generator. What units make up a DC generator 3-unit regulator? The voltage regulator, the current limiter, and the reverse current cutout. What method is used to control the voltage of an aircraft alternator? The frequency depends upon the speed of rotation of the rotor and the number of poles. What determines the frequency of the voltage of an alternator? The frequency depends upon the speed of rotation of the rotor and the number of poles. How is alternator frequency maintained? By installing a constant speed drive unit between the engine and the alternator. What are the 3 basic types of DC motors? Series, shunt, and compound. Name the parts of a DC motor. The armature, the field, the brushes, and the frame. What is open wiring? Open wiring is any wire group, or wire bundle not enclosed in conduit. When installing single wires or wire bundles, how much slack is normally allowed between supports? Slack between supports should normally not exceed 1/2 inch. What precautions should be taken when running wires close to heating ducts or exhaust stacks? The wire should be insulated with a high-temperature material. What is the primary purpose of lubricant in an aircraft engine? To reduce friction between moving parts. What is the most important property that aircraft reciprocating engine oil must possess? Viscosity. What are the main oil contaminants? They are gasoline, moisture, acids, dirt, carbon, and metallic particles. What do metallic particles on an oil screen indicate? Metallic particles may be an indication of internal failure of the engine. What could cause oil foaming? Foaming can be caused by diluted oil, contaminated oil, or the oil level too high. What would be an indication of blocked oil cooler passages? High oil temperature. What would be an indication of an inadequate oil supply? Low oil pressure and high oil temperature. What type of oil is used in turbine engine lubrication systems? Specially developed synthetic oils. What are two types of oil coolers used in turbine engine lubrication systems? The air-cooled oil cooler and the fuel-cooled oil cooler are the two basic types in general use. What is the weight of aircraft engine oil? Approximately 7.5 pounds per US gallon. What is the purpose of the condenser in a high-tension magneto-electrical system? To prevent arcing at the points and to hasten the collapse of the magnetic field around the primary coil. Where is the E-gap position in a magneto? The E-gap position is when the rotating magnet is a few degrees past the neutral position. What are the three major circuits of a high-tension magneto system? The magnetic circuit, the primary electrical circuit, and the secondary electrical circuit. What are the components of a high-tension magnetic circuit? The magnetic circuit consists of a permanent multipole rotating magnet, a soft iron core, and pole shoes. What is the piston position when the spark occurs in a cylinder? The piston is a specified number of crankshaft degrees before top dead center of the compression stroke. When the ignition switch is in the off position, what is the condition of the primary circuit? It is completed through the ignition switch to ground. In a dual magneto ignition system, what part of the system is grounded when the ignition switch is placed in the right position? The left magneto circuit will be grounded. What is internal timing of a magneto? It is adjusting the breaker points to open when the rotating magnet is at the E-gap position. What is staggered ignition timing? It is the firing of one spark plug before the other one instead of firing them simultaneously. What type ignition system is used in most turbine engines? A typical turbine engine is equipped with an electronic capacitor type ignition system. When are turbine engine ignition systems normally in use? The ignition system is normally required only for starting or restarting an engine. What are the two most commonly used carburetors in small reciprocating engines? They are the flow-type carburetor and the pressure-type carburetor. What is the purpose of a mixture control in a flow-type carburetor? It is to control the fuel-air mixture as air density changes with changes in altitude. What instrument can be used to check a cylinder bore for out-of-roundness? A cylinder bore can be checked with dial indicator, a telescopic gauge and micrometer, or an inside micrometer. What is the purpose of crankshaft dynamic dampers used in aircraft engines? Dampers are used to overcome forces which cause deflection of the crankshaft and torsional vibration. What is the purpose of the interconnector tubes between can-type combustion chambers? To spread the flame to the combustion chambers that are not equipped with igniter plugs during engine starting. What is a split compressor system in a turbine engine? The split compressor system requires two concentric shafts joining the turbine stages to their respective compressors. What items must be included in the operational check of a reciprocating engine prior to approval for return to service after 100-hour inspection? Power output, magnetos, fuel and oil pressure, cylinder and oil temperature. What is the electric source for a cylinder head temperature gauge? The gauge is connected to a thermocouple attached to the cylinder which tests show to be the hottest on the engine. What method is used to determine proper fire extinguisher container pressure? Check the container gauge to determine if the pressure is between the prescribed minimum and maximum limits. What factors must be considered in determining the proper grade of oil to use in a specific engine? The operating load, rotational speeds, and operating temperatures are the most important factors to be considered. What is the purpose of the oil flow control valve? The oil flow control valve, located on the oil cooler, regulates the flow of oil either into or around the oil cooler. What is the fuel metering force in a flow-type carburetor? It is the differential one pressure between the pressure in the flow chamber and that at the nozzle. What will be the result of using excessively rich idle mixtures? Excessively rich idle mixtures will cause spark plug fouling. In what position do you place the mixture control of a pressure injection carburetor to stop the engine? In the idle cutoff position. What RPM indication should result when the mixture control is placed in the idle cutoff position when the idle mixture is set correctly? There should be a slight increase in RPM followed by a rapid drop of RPM to 0. What is the purpose of strainers in a fuel system? They are used to prevent foreign matter from entering the carburetor. What is the purpose of fuel selector valves? They provide a means of shutting off fuel flow for tank and engine selection, for crossfeed, and for fuel transfer. What should be looked for when inspecting an engine-driven fuel pump? Look for fuel leaks and security of mounting. What type fuel pump is generally used with large reciprocating engines? A positive displacement rotary cane type pump. What happens to the excess fuel not required by the engine in a constant displacement pump? The pressure relief valve opens and the fuel is routed back to the inlet side of the pump. What is the most common type of fuel boost pump? The electrically driven centrifugal type pump. What are the 3 general causes of vapor lock? They are low fuel pressure, high fuel temperatures, and excessive fuel turbulence. Turbine engine fuel pumps may be divided into what 2 distinct system categories? Constant displacement and variable displacement. What category is a turbine engine-driven gear type pump? Constant displacement. What type fuel pump can be made to vary the fuel flow at any speed? A variable displacement pump. What part of a gas turbine engine fuel system is very susceptible to the formation of ice? The fuel filter. How is the engine fuel system protected from ice formation? By the use of fuel heaters. Why is a micron fuel filter provided with a bypass valve as a necessary safety factor? Because the small openings in this type filter make it very susceptible to clogging. What are the 3 major parts of a reciprocating engine induction system? The air scoop and ducting, the carburetor, and the intake manifold. What effect does induction system icing have on engine performance? Induction system icing can cause an engine to act erratically and lose power. What engine indication can be the result of a dirty air filter? Low power. What is the danger of using carburetor heat when operating at high power settings? The higher air temperatures could cause detonation and possible engine failure. Carburetor throttle ice is most likely to form when the throttle is in which position? During part throttle operation when the throttle is near the closed position. What are the 2 general classifications of superchargers used in reciprocating engine induction systems? They are classified as internally driven or externally driven supercharger systems. What is the purpose of a distribution impeller in a supercharger? It is designed to break up the fuel globules into finer particles for better distribution to the cylinders. How does an internally driven supercharger boost air pressure? A high-speed impeller is driven through a gear train from the crankshaft at a gear ratio that varies from -6:1 to 12:1. Where does an externally driven supercharger get its power? The exhaust gases are directed against a turbine. For this reason, they are commonly called turbochargers. What unit regulates the amount of exhaust gases to the turbine of a turbocharger? The wastegate. What type of power is used to control the position of the turbocharger wastegate on some engines? Oil pressure to an actuating piston. What is the most common means of regulating the cooling airflow through radial engine? By the use of cowl flaps. What is the purpose of the fins on engine cylinders? To increase the effective size of the cylinder for cooling. What other engine characteristics are designed to aid in engine cooling besides cooling fins? The engine cowling and baffles are designed to force air over the cylinder cooling fins. What should be done to cylinders when too much of the cooling fin area is broken off? This cylinder should be replaced because it cannot cool properly and a hot spot will develop. When should cowl flaps be kept in the fully open position? Normally during all ground operations. What publication should be referred to before reprofiling cylinder cooling fins? The manufacturer's service or overhaul manual should be used to obtain the allowable limits. What power sources are used to operate the cowl flaps? Cowl flaps may be operated by electrical power, hydraulic power, or manually. What are the main reasons that excessive heat in reciprocating engine is undesirable? Excessive heat shortens the life of the engine parts, impairs lubrication, and affects combustion. What is the source of air that is directed to turbine engine bearings for cooling? It is bleed air from the compressor section of the engine. What types of material are used to make insulation blankets for turbine engines? They are made of stainless steel with layers of aluminum foil, fiberglass, and silver foil. What areas of a turbine engine are cooled by the secondary air passing through the engine? The combustion chambers and the turbines. What are two types of reciprocating engine exhaust systems? The short stack system and the collector system. What type of exhaust system is generally used on low-powered non-supercharged engines? The short stack system. What type of exhaust system is used on turbocharged engines? The exhaust collector system. Which type of exhaust system creates a higher exhaust back pressure? The collector system. What is the purpose of a reciprocating engine exhaust system? To dispose of the high-temperature, noxious gases that are discharged by the engine. What happens when lead, zinc, or galvanized marks are made on an exhaust system? The mark is absorbed by the metal when it is heated and causes a change in the molecular structure of the metal. What type of visual indication can usually be seen in the area of an exhaust leak? Exhaust leaks usually leave flat gray or sooty black streaks on the pipes in the area of the leak. How are ceramic-coated exhaust stacks cleaned? By degreasing only. What is the usual cause of muffler and heat exchanger failures? They are usually caused by thermal and vibration cracking or ruptures in areas of stress concentration. Where are exhaust manifold and stack failures most likely to occur? These failures usually occur at welded or clamped points in the system. What factors are affected if the area of the exhaust nozzle of a turbine engine is changed? The size of the exhaust nozzle affects both the engine performance and the exhaust gas temperature. What are the probes in a turbine exhaust tailpipe used for? They are used to measure exhaust gas temperature. What is the purpose of a propeller? To create thrust and either pull or push the airplane through the air. What are the two classifications of propellers? The tractor type and the pusher type. What type of propeller has the blade angle built into the propeller and cannot be changed? A fixed pitch propeller. What is the purpose of the metal tipping on the leading edge of a wooden propeller? It is to protect the propeller from damage caused by flying particles in the air during landing, taxiing, and takeoff. What is the process of determining the positions of the tips of the propeller blades relative to each other? Blade tracking. What tool is used to determine propeller blade angle? A universal propeller protractor. What are the aerodynamic forces and loads acting on a rotating propeller blade? A rotating propeller is acted upon by centrifugal, twisting, and bending forces. What should be used to clean aluminum and steel propeller blades and hubs? They should be washed with a suitable cleaning solvent using a brush or cloth. What positions are used on a balance stand to check a two-bladed propeller for static balance? First the vertical position and then a horizontal position. When centrifugal force acts on the counterweights of a hydraulic counterweight propeller, it tends to rotate the blades in which direction? Centrifugal force tends to increase the blade pitch. What usually places the greatest demand on a gas turbine APU? Bleed air loads. What is typically used to start an APU? Its own electric starter and battery power. What is the usual source of a gas turbine APU's fuel supply? One of the aircraft's main fuel tanks. At what speed does a gas turbine APU operate? An APU operates at or near its rated speed regardless of the electrical or pneumatic loads imposed. How is a heavily loaded APU approaching its maximum exhaust gas temperature prevented from overheating? By the use of a load control valve that modulates the pneumatic load to maintain a safe operating temperature. How is the cool down for many APUs accomplished prior to shutdown? By running the APU for a specified minimum period of time after closing the bleed air valve. What is the operating effective following a required cool-down period prior to APU shutdown? The APU's EGT is lowered and stabilized. How is an APU's operating speed maintained despite variations in the loads imposed? By the APU's fuel control automatically adjusting the fuel flow. Name at least 2 uses for APU-produced pneumatic power. Engine starting, ground air conditioning, anti-icing. What type of operating practice could cause thermal shock and possible damage to an APU? Abrupt shutdown of the APU when it is heavily loaded. What powers the variable inlet guide vanes used on some APUs to regulate compressor intake airflow? Fuel pressure. How long is a typical APU cool-down period? 3 minutes. What type ice control systems are used for propellers? Either fluid or electrical de-icing systems are used for de-icing propellers. What are the different types of piston rings?